back at it again with analyzing a RWBY fight scene. You can check out the playlist with all the other fights I've covered, but this time around my patrons voted for the incredible Volume 3 Qrow vs. Winter match. An incredibly noteworthy fight for a couple of reasons. First, despite taking place during the volume that had the whole tournament going on, this fight has nothing to do with that tournament, which helped to keep things sort of fresh and different. Second, this is the first time a fight doesn't involve any students. Not just this volume, but for the whole show. We've had adults in the fray before, but there was always at least one student in the encounter as well. This is just two higher level combatants being able to go all out. And third, it introduces two characters we had been waiting to meet, Weiss's sister and Ruby's beloved uncle. Weiss mentions wanting a bunk bed, which implies having a sibling, and then in Volume 2, Winter gets briefly name-dropped.
I think your sister Winter might be here as well.
So it was fun finally getting to see someone from Weiss's home life. More exciting, however, was the long-awaited reveal of Qrow.
That's my uncle.
From teaching Ruby to wield a scythe to saving Yang when she was very young, the sisters had hinted towards this cool, heroic figure in their lives, and finally he arrives. And then these two going head to head was a fantastic way to reveal their characters and abilities. Well, honestly, the big reveal would have landed a bit better if the opening didn't spoil it for us, but still. Before combat even starts, I have things I want to gush about. Qrow entering the situation with us seeing his POV drunk vision is just a really cool cinematography idea. I feel like Volume 3 in general played around with the camera a lot more than any other volume. Bit of a shame none of the background NPCs react at all to him decapitating the robot though. Before they start trading blows, the two actually have a verbal back and forth, and it's fine. RWBY dialogue at this time had a bit of a habit of trying to make it sound like the characters were alluding to something bigger and more mysterious, but in the long run end up amounting to nothing that important. It's a lot more prevalent in Volumes 4 and 5 with the Bronwyn twins, but even here in Volume 3, all of Qrow's dialogue is empty fluff meant to sound intriguing, but clearly the writers hadn't figured out a real story behind the intrigue. And you know what? Let's analyze this discussion to help explain what I mean.
Not you.
Hey!
You.
Here comes Qrow, going out of his way to address Winter and clearly sounds like he knows her, apparently well enough to recognize her main mode of travel.
So that gaudy ship of yours in town?
Immediately your brain goes off. Does this mean they've met before? Does it mean Winter is someone of high enough standing to be well known even by local huntsmen?
I'm standing right before you.
So it would seem.
I just really like this joke. They're really hamming it up how drunk Qrow seems here, so when he pops off in combat with a high level of competency, it's a bit more of a cool surprise.
You realize you just destroyed Atlas military property.
Shout out to these background extras being like, not my monkeys, not my circus. Let's get out of here before it gets ugly.
See, I mistook this for some sort of sentient garbage.
This line always sort of stood out to me. It's the word sentient being used, as if implying the robots can't be labeled as property if they can act on some sort of level of personal autonomy. A fascinating idea to ponder once we start thinking about Penny. I don't think Qrow knew about Penny or anything, but maybe he knew Ironwood wanted to reach higher levels of robotic autonomy, and Qrow is teasing Winter over that apparent current failure. Or, a more interesting idea, maybe initially they had planned on Winter being more at odds with Penny down the line, as if Winter wouldn't really view Penny as a real girl, and this was meant to be an early establishing idea for that. But then clearly as the story developed, they might have just changed their minds about this. If it was ever really an idea to begin with, I don't know, I'm just spitballing.
I don't have time for your immature games, Qrow.
And there we go, they do know each other on some sort of personal level. It's not just recognizing someone who might be famous or noteworthy. Winter implying she's had to deal with his immature games hints to an idea that they have had to deal with each other multiple times before. But on what? What sort of missions meant they'd cross paths? Well, that's what I was kind of talking about. We're setting up this idea of a history between them, but that goes nowhere. I'm pretty sure Winter and Qrow don't even exchange a single line of dialogue with each other after finally reuniting in Atlas in Volumes 7 or 8.
A bunch of sellouts. Just like your boss.
Again, this goes nowhere. Ironwood is a sellout. To who? over what? Not Salem or any of her forces. I guess maybe the Council? After all, they chose Ironwood over Oz at the end of Volume 2.
I heard old Ironwood finally turned his back on Ozpin.
But that was the Veil Council, not the Atlas Council, and they never show back up again, and the Atlas Council are actively at odds with him later. I feel like the Council was initially planned to play a bigger role, but then they sort of fumbled it. Each of the headmasters at least mention the Council, but they never really make appearances except for Sleet and Carmilla. These nameless forces that somehow get in the headmaster's way, but don't seem to exist in any other capacity. Perhaps they were also meant to be a pawn of Salem, as if she was maybe one of these council members and had more political sway, but then they went with the hidden for centuries in a castle somewhere idea instead. Long story short, it just makes this dialogue confusing at best and pointless at worst.
Just like Atlas is gonna protect all of us, huh?
Theory time again. I think Atlas was initially meant to be much more authoritarian. Like, they are authoritarian to a degree, especially compared to the others, but they talk about soldiers and airships, but aside from chasing Penny around and standing guard looking for Grimm, they don't really seem to be a bother, and we don't really see them too often in casual settings. I suspect maybe initially the idea was that Ironwood was planning on isolating Atlas to prioritize its own safety and sort of leave everyone else to fend for themselves. Or perhaps after the fall of Beacon and Oz's death, the idea was that Ironwood would sort of take over and enact strict militaristic rule all over the world, trying to take Ozpin's spot. But again, that goes nowhere. In fact, the exact opposite happens. Team RWBY's dramatic hesitation of working with Ironwood even sort of leans into this idea that Ironwood would be aligned with some force outside of Ozpin's circle of trusted companions, or had overreached his authority. It's just so confusing that there's all this dialogue implying Atlas is this untrustworthy, double-crossing faction, but then the real narrative instead paints Ozpin as the untrustworthy double-crosser, with lies and half-truths. Weird.
Come take it.
I really like this detail of Qrow flipping his bangs out of his eyes. I don't think he really does it in any other point in time other than here, but it's still cool. It's just a nice little extra detail that they didn't need to include. Make another model with slight differences that'll only be used for a brief moment in time. They don't really do things like this in the post-poser era of the show. Yang's eyes don't flare up as often, Neo doesn't change her eye colors as much. Even Ilya, whose whole gimmick was changing her colors, only does it like 4 times total. Just these extra little details that are nice to see. Makes the world feel a bit more real and lived in. Anyways, now that I've babbled about dialogue for forever, let's get into the actual fight. Based on the way that the Schnee sisters' eyes are pointed, one of them is not looking at Qrow. Winter's eyes in particular seem to be pointed more towards the ground, I think. Also, her wrist is broken. This happens a lot. With swords in RWBY, they break their wrists to point them forward. Winter has her second smaller knife in her other hand, even though she hasn't been shown deploying it yet. Also, Qrow's own weapon, Harbinger, sort of pops in and out of existence all throughout the conversation beforehand. I know we just got started, but I want to interrupt to gush about how much I love the choice to make it sunset here. The orange-yellow of the sky beautifully helps Qrow's darker palette pop, and simultaneously manages to make Winter's all-white palette pop too. Also, it's just cool looking. Approaching Qrow, her second knife is gone. Honestly, I don't think her first strike would have hit Qrow even if he didn't dodge it. She was totally aiming to kill with the other strikes though. One of those kids in the background is looking at the sky. What are you doing, hun? It's hard to tell, but when Qrow begins to bow, I don't think Harbinger is on his back, but in the next shot it is. It hangs rather low though, so you could argue it's just out of frame, but I don't know, it's pretty dang big. I think you'd at least be able to see the handle. Similar to all swords in this show, Winter's sword will change lengths seemingly at random. Good luck trying to figure out a consistent size for Blake's Gamble Shroud. It's the worst with her. Nice little touch that Winter's fingers curl up as she readies her downward strike. There's a guy back there who's completely turned away from the fight. What's wrong with you kids? Based on how long Harbinger looks here, it should have actually gone through Winter's stomach rather than just under her arm. Flipping the sword into his other hand is really, really cool. It's a nice little show-off maneuver. If you go frame by frame though, you can see it has to like teleport into his hand because I wasn't flipping close enough to his model before. Adorable. An incredibly funny little taunt from Qrow here. I wish he got to be more playful like this in future volumes. I feel like he really develops into grumpy mentor and lost all his cool guy pizzazz. This entire time, he's had a very playful little smile on his face, but as he starts his first barrage, he looks pretty darn pissed off. His swings have really faint red afterglow, which is fascinating. With how orange the setting is, I don't think anyone would ever really notice this, especially at full speed. Though, if you've seen my analysis before, you know I love colored attack swings. God, I hope they play around with this more in Volume 10. The plain white starburst for everyone is so lame looking. Winter's sword is suddenly gone, and her eyes are firmly shut as she starts her backflips. Also, going frame by frame, it definitely looks like he should have hit her knees as she flipped, and then 100% just hits her in the face and then again in her legs when she does her second one. Despite being in mid-flip recovery when we cut to the next angle, she seems already upright, and her sword has magically returned as well. Also, it looks like the entire ground didn't render its texture properly. See how it's usually this dark gray brick pattern? This is just an untextured plane. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever spotted a rendering issue on this big of a scale in RWBY before. But the shot's only 20 seconds long, so I guess it's easy to miss it. The robots Qrow destroyed at the start of the scene seem to have vanished. Oh, but look, you can see RWBY running up from the right side of the screen.
That is my uncle!
Nice little callback to how she said it the first time.
Teach him respect, Winter!
I like how their words of encouragement are really different, really playing with their different personalities in a fun way. Mercury recognizes Qrow from when they ambushed Amber and rushes off to tattle to Cinder about it. But never mind that, pay attention to the fact Qrow and Winter are freaking going supersonic in the background. The attack flares don't even line up with where they're currently standing because they're moving too fast for them to keep up. During their next barrage, now it's Winter's turn to break character. She's been stone-faced and angry this whole time, but this is the first time we see her crack a cute little smirk. Wow. Qrow strikes a very deep squat maneuver, and you just know he was walking funny for like a week afterwards. I feel sore just looking at him. Throughout the whole fight, Qrow's cape kind of just goes wherever it wants. It's the physics engine they're using, though it does mean it sometimes clips through his shirt or sword and stuff. There's not much to really say about this barrage. The two strike big poses and the camera pushes in close to highlight their back and forths, doing a good job making the two seem on equal ground. At the very end though, Qrow zips off screen and then the camera kind of falls behind. Like, we can watch this group of girls by the bench. Specifically, there's this one in a teal shirt that's easy to recognize. They're being pushed out of frame on the left side, but then suddenly the camera jumps and they're centered again. Also, there's two random background characters who are moving, and it's all on screen for like 3 frames total, if even. Cutting to the next angle, it seems like the fighters have rushed past the crowd that was circling them, including Winter's entourage of robots. In the next shot, we see they're now behind Qrow, after all. Winter jumps, and there's a very large starburst that obscures her, and I honestly have no idea what it was. Qrow hasn't swung his sword, but I presume this was meant to imply another parry of their blades. After all, in the next shot, their swords are clashed together. I don't know, maybe Qrow missed his cue. Also, his cape is completely detached from his model. Oops. There's a lot more animation goofs in this fight than I expected. I guess the actual fight is just so engaging and thrilling that it's easy to miss any of these small details or inconsistencies. And now, the infamous Qrow hit. Look at this perfection. Whoever animated this facial expression must have been having a fun day. 10 out of 10. It's literally only on screen for 1 frame, but man, it's these little things that really keep you going, you know? Winter's robots seem to have vanished behind him, though. First time we get to see Winter summoning a glyph. Ooh. Technically, Qrow should have been blasted away with all the debris. He couldn't physically be able to stay there, but also, screw it. It's a fun combat anime and it looks cool. That's the secret. If it looks cool, then inconsistencies or weirdness can be easier forgiven. Nice little touch that you can see the shadows from the debris as they fly through the air. Also, that the NPCs back away, though I say Qrow was cutting it close to accidentally hitting some of these bystanders. After Winter's big crazy jump to avoid that hit, when she finally lands, her see-through shawl thing on her hip reacts to the physics of the ground, but the longer coattails do not. Instead, they just clip right through. Interesting. When she stands upright, we can see the buildings of Beacon behind behind her are improperly layered, and they appear to be floating quite a bit off the ground. I like the little moment to show how surprised Winter is that Qrow closed the distance so quickly. She's looked very confident before, and it's nice to see that the battle does have ebbs and flows. This is a light post he cuts in half, by the way. Winter does a twirling somersault over him, seemingly with no wind-up. I guess she is a specialist. And another nice close-up of her smile to show how she's recovered from momentarily being caught off guard. Again, physically, I don't think this would really work like this, but also I don't care because it's really cool. Easily my favorite part of the whole fight. Including the fact it's now Qrow's turn to be caught off guard. I really wish her kick didn't have such a big blinding flare though. Like, I can't see anything. It really deflated the impact of such a cool move by, well, obscuring the actual impact. Winter throughout the whole fight flips around a lot. She is constantly doing front flips or back flips. If Weiss is the ballerina, I wonder if Winter was like an acrobat or gymnast. There's Qrow's sword and the fallen light post he should be standing near, and yet Qrow himself has vanished. But hey, at least the robots came back, yippee! And in the next shot, when Winter lands on this flag post thing, we can even see the 2 robots Qrow killed before, and the crater in the ground he made. Neat little moment of continuity. Also a nice way of introducing the fact Qrow also has a gun in his sword. I don't know how she just runs up the vertical wall. I mean, I guess she is a specialist. Interesting detail, Qrow's bullets are yellow on impact. I wonder if that's just like a colorful fun thing to add, or maybe they're electric dust. Okay, you know how I keep saying the coolness will outweigh the inconsistencies? I do cross the line at how much these two are just launching themselves around. They're jumping like 40 plus feet in the air with no semblances or dust to use to help propel them. There's a point where they stop feeling human if you stretch the rules of reality this far. Hey, it's finally time for Winter to actually deploy her smaller knife. Well, I say knife, but really lots of times it seems just as long as her regular sword, so I don't know. It's easy to get distracted with a really cool block Qrow does, but you can actually see that the pillar beneath them crumbles apart before they blast off of it. Pillar? I don't think this is called a pillar, but I don't know what other word to use. Structural archway or something. We can see that these tower things have these, like, satellites or something mounted to the top. Each satellite has 4 segments on it. When this structural archway breaks apart, the satellite on the tower next to them is missing the central beam that they should be attached to. Disappointing the students don't run from the debris this time, though I suppose at this point it's like, I guess I'll just die. I can't outrun this. In the fog of the aftermath, you can barely see Qrow and Winter zipping apart before we can clearly see them coming clashing back together again. Winter is hard to make out though, but I'm pretty sure this is her elbow. Qrow whips out another insane crouching squat that he will likely regret in the morning. This whole barrage has them sort of teleporting around a bit. That's not an animation mistake though. This was meant to further imply their incredible speed. They go so fast, Qrow's shadow even loses him for a while there. This is always cool. Every time. Using your weapon to slow your movement, it's cool. A bit of a bummer that the trail in the ground doesn't stick around in the follow-up shots, but it's a small detail, I suppose. Not something serious like, oh, I don't know, Ruby and Weiss being completely absent from all crowd shots in the entirety of this fight. Winter has so much build-up to her summoning that I'm shocked Qrow didn't just shoot her. Honestly, there's several times he could have just shot at her, but I suspect he never really intended to do actual harm. As she readies herself, you can actually see this little non-moving Nevermore summon behind her, lying in wait, ready to pounce. Winter's fingers don't move when she flips her sword. That's pretty common with Ruby nowadays, but I'm surprised because they did animate Qrow's hand when he flipped his sword at the start of the fight. I like the blue feather effect around Winter when she does the summon. I wish they had kept that around for her. That little Nevermore we saw before actually starts flapping its wings when she activates the summoning glyph, but it never actually ends up moving from this spot. Must have been a weird animation goof or something. You would never be able to see it due to its speed and size, but the Nevermore's bodies and legs are not attached to each other. They all seem to have a little gap in their backs, and their feet are detached from their legs too. Listen, Winter, I know you want to win, but there sure are a lot of unarmed students standing directly behind Qrow. God, her little smirk is real dang cute, isn't it? When she jumps off the glyph, we can see the aura of it dissipating lingers on the ground still afterwards. Fun fact, apparently the initial idea was that Qrow would fully deploy his scythe here, but at the last second they decided to just have it be a tease and wait to reveal it later. I think that's a good idea. Give us something to look forward to. Also, we already revealed quite a bit of cool stuff in this fight already. You don't want to diminish the reveal of summoning by upstaging it right away, right? This pose is so dumb looking. Listen, Winter has struck a lot of different poses during this fight, and they've all been pretty cool. But this one is so goofy. Why are you on your tippy toes? Why are your legs all knock-kneed? She would be totally unstable and off balance this way. Have you ever tried striking this pose? Also, you're posing with your whole back to the enemy? Oh, I'm sorry. Is your rinky-dink little knife supposed to protect you from the incoming spinal tap from your enemy? Also, to bend her arm to even get the knife back there would be incredibly painful and difficult to pull off. Stupid, awful, terrible pose to finish off the fight. It makes no sense. Is that an untextured background extra way over there in the corner? Is this not the type of content you come to these videos for? I live for these kind of things. It's easy to dislike Winter in her introduction. She's really mean and hits Weiss, so it's pretty cathartic seeing her royally fuck up here. Not only starting the fight, but even letting herself get goaded into attacking a target who's not even wielding their weapon.
Only a novice would refer to that as a victory.
It's really hard to see because of her hair and the glyph, but Ironwood is actually standing back there behind her. And that's finally a wrap for this fight. I already mentioned it, but I'm legitimately shocked at how many weird little inconsistencies or errors are just peppered all throughout this fight. Most of it you likely wouldn't even notice at full speed, and they in no way ruin the fight or anything. I don't like pointing out the clipping problems or rendering issues to try and mock the scene. I truly do just find those kind of things really interesting and fun to notice. I just want to make that really clear because I don't want you to think those silly little issues is the reason I actually don't like this fight. In fact, this is my least favorite fight from the whole volume. I know this is an unpopular opinion. This is generally a fan favorite encounter, and don't get me wrong, I totally see why. Even with it being my least favorite, there's still really cool, now classic and iconic moments here. So how can this be my least favorite? Well, honestly, it's a lot like what I already talked about at the very beginning.
A bunch of sellouts. Just like your boss.
The whole fight feels like it goes nowhere in the long run. I think it's good to establish these characters. Winter is a huge motivational factor for Weiss, especially after Beacon falls, and Qrow quickly becomes a main character in Volume 4 too, on top of helping out in the finale of this volume. But it does feel like a bit of a waste of time to give these minor characters a big 3-minute long fight scene. Especially Winter, who vanishes for 3 whole volumes after this, and this implied rivalry never gets touched on again. They don't interact once they reunite in Atlas. Like I said, it's a nice change of pace from the tournament style we had in the previous episodes, but this is just a less fun encounter. While I appreciate how much the two really played around with the environment, physically interacting with the set around them and going vertical up the walls, this is just not as cool as the flashy tournament arena. Also, I know their weapons are meant to feel more mature with their muted colors and simple metallic grays, but they're just not nearly as exciting as the wackadoo over-the-top weapons we get from the students. And finally, I really wish we got to keep up with Ruby and Weiss during the fight. I don't usually enjoy cutting away from combat to get crowd reactions, but these are pretty important people for 2 of our main characters. At the very least, I wish we could at least see them standing around in the crowd. But yeah, those are my personal gripes with the scene, and honestly, Volume 3's fights are just some of the best from the whole show. Me saying it's my least favorite isn't an insult, it just has a lot of competition. And going through frame by frame was a lot of fun. It's very quick-paced, so getting to slow down and take it all in was a delight. And I hope you had fun with it all too. Shout out to my $100 patron, Mesothelioma. If Mesothelioma was a summon in Ruby, they'd just win everything automatically. Shout out to my $10 patrons, you're all amazing. Andrew, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, Classy Critic, Azoth, Genital War Thunder, Jake, Amber, Scaring Crows, Messiah, Jacob, Ben's Sketchbook, Lucienne, Wild Pilot, Bunkin Duncan, Hoodie Angel, Ranger, C1 Trooper, Tech, Lavaros, Unspoken, Tyrene, Thanos, Pandora, Peter, Aguri, Eden, Silverheart Soul, Doki Pokey, Zappy, Wolfgang, Philip, Nerf Ned, Middle Coop, Cat with a Knife, Rose, Mar Ruby, The Lover, Maximum Warp, and Senior Columbia. So what do you think? What do you think of this fight? I know I've a bit of an unpopular opinion, like I said. I know people love this one, and I do find it a lot of fun. It was fascinating. I keep thinking about the ground not being rendered in that one shot. I've never noticed. It's so weird and so interesting, and I love these kind of things. So let me know what you think, not only of like going through frame by frame, but the fight in general, the stuff I talked about with their dialogue in the beginning, which is fascinating to theorize about. Any and all thoughts and opinions about this? And remember, if you want to be able to vote on whatever I end up doing next, you have to be a patron. They're always the ones voting on the next analysis, so if you want to, check that out. I would appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.